I have a confession. I find cities absolutely exhausting, and I usually do my best to avoid them. But there are occasions when I make an exception. And when I visited Puglia in southern Italy in June, I knew I wanted to see two very special cities, Bari and Taranto. Bari is the capital of Puglia and sits on the beautiful Adriatic coast. We parked on the Lungomare, and it has to be one of the most scenic parking spots of our trip. From here, we walked into town, passing an ancient fortress. The city walls here provide a wonderful walkway and vistas of the harbour. Dating from around the 4th century BC, they've been partially restored and would once have encircled the whole city. And this extraordinary column of justice is where those in debt would have been chained and publicly shamed. It makes you wonder just what this lion has seen and heard in times gone by. Bari Vecchia, the old town, is beautiful, and we started our exploration in its main square, the Piazza Mercantile, before drifting around the delightful old streets. We soon found our way to Castello Svevo. It was commissioned by Emperor Frederick II in the 13th century on what remained of a Norman fortification. Our next stop was perhaps the most famous street in Bari, Arco Basso, or Strada delle Orecchiette, which translates as Pasta Street. It's here where tourists can watch the nonnas, the grandmothers, making the traditional orecchiette, the ear-shaped pasta which the Puglian region is famous for. I was lucky enough to enjoy several dishes of orecchiette while in Puglia. We were getting pretty hungry by this stage and found a delightful shop selling made-to-order sandwiches on wonderfully crispy bread. At just €4 each, this was a bargain of a lunch and meant we could keep moving quickly to see even more sights. We passed the Cathedral of St. Sabinus. And found our way to the Basilica of San Nicholas. It was built in the 11th century, and I really loved the medieval bull sculptures and carvings. The ornate gilded ceiling of the nave dates from the 17th century. The real draw of the basilica is St. Nicholas himself. Born in the 3rd century in Asia Minor, he became a bishop and was known for his great generosity. He was also a wonderful protector of children, a reputation that led to the legend of Santa Claus. Originally buried in Myra, which is now in modern-day Turkey, Christians became concerned that pilgrimages to St. Nicholas's tomb would become too difficult in the war-torn region, and so his remains were moved to Bari in 1087, and the basilica was built over his new tomb here. We loved our time exploring Bari on the Adriatic coast, but there was another fabulous Puglian city over on the Mediterranean coast, which we enjoyed just as much: Taranto. It was so exciting to approach by car, although we had a little more trouble finding a parking space than we did in Bari. But once we'd worked out the rather temperamental parking meters, we enjoyed a walk around the harbour with its glorious views out to sea and across to the castle. The swing bridge spans the navigation canal between Mar Grande and Mar Piccola, Big Sea and Little Sea, which explains the city's nickname, City of Two Seas. Crossing the bridge into the Old Town, we spotted a couple of cats who seemed to have claimed the remains of a Greek temple for themselves. We followed one of the back streets. It was pretty quiet at lunchtime, with just a few locals about, but I really enjoyed seeing this very authentic old town. It felt totally unspoilt, a little rough around the edges perhaps. But there were so many delightful details to enjoy. And we might have stepped over the threshold of one building and peered up the stairwell to get a closer glimpse of life here. There was a bit of work going on around the cathedral, but it didn't put me off popping inside. Taranto's cathedral is the most ancient in Puglia. The crypt dates back to the 10th century, and although fascinating to enter and wonderfully cool after the hot walk through the city streets, I couldn't help feeling a little relieved to see the light once again. My real draw to Taranto was its National Archaeological Museum, where I could have happily lost myself for a good half a day. Alas, I had just 90 minutes, so made sure I saw the highlights, beginning with the many Greek funerary artifacts on display. One surprising discovery here was the fabulous collection of Medusa Heads. These were made to decorate gable roofs, and more than 1,000 of them were found in Taranto. They date from the late 7th to 6th century BC, and look fabulously terrifying displayed together like this in a marvellous Medusa medley. But the real reason for my visit was the gold collection here, and the highlight piece, the enormous boat-shaped earring from the 4th century BC. The detail is exquisite and features pendants and winged female figures. All the pieces here were created by Taranto goldsmiths and were mostly found in tombs where they would have been placed to accompany the deceased. I think there's such an intimate connection when it comes to jewellery. To know that these pieces were treasured and worn by women separated from us by long centuries. This was one of the best collections I've ever seen, and it's still inspiring jewellery makers today, with a local shop selling a few pieces. Thank you so much for joining us in Bari and Taranto. We very much enjoyed our 2-day trips and hope we've inspired you to visit these stunning coastal cities if you happen to be visiting Puglia.